This is Bloomberg Businessweek Daily, reporting from the magazine that helps global leaders stay ahead, with insight on the people, companies, and trends shaping today's complex economy, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Businessweek Daily with Carol Massar and Tim Stenivek, live on Bloomberg Radio, television, YouTube, and Bloomberg Originals.
You have been listening to President Trump live there with his cabinet, making a lot of comments about a range of subjects, I think it's safe to say. Again, Carol Massar, Tim Stenivek, you are listening and watching Bloomberg Businessweek Daily live from Bloomberg headquarters in New York City. It is Tuesday, December 2nd. So the president wrapping up remarks at that cabinet meeting. Specifically, one of the things that's been top of mind is what's going on in Venezuela, Tim. Yeah,
and we'll kind of go in reverse chronological order here with what he most recently said. He was asked if anyone is selling drugs to the U.S., they are subject to an attack. He was asked on strikes. It's not just Venezuela that's subject to attack. The questions really, a lot of questions focused on that attack and those attacks, but they also really span the globe. They talked about Russia, Ukraine. There was a question about Iraq in there as well. We're going to stick on the attacks in South and Central America South America for now. Asked on the September 2nd strike, didn't know about a second strike. Trump asked on September strike. I'm still getting information. He said, if we have to, we will attack on land. If we have to attack drug traffickers on land, we will. We're going to start doing drug strikes on land, going to start doing strikes on land. Land strikes are much easier and starting soon.
Yeah, certainly one of the things geopolitically that we're keeping an eye on. You mentioned also Russia, Ukraine, and it does look like he talks about, commenting on the peace talks for Russia's war in Ukraine, talking about the White House team over in Russia right now trying to settle something. Also talking about going to New Orleans in a couple of weeks. The Louisiana governor, he said, the president, that the Louisiana governor asked for federal help in New Orleans. I also think in some of the things that are certainly of interest to the Bloomberg audience about a Fed chair. And he said that we do have Fed chair candidates down to one. This would be someone who would take over for Jay Powell when his term is up in the spring. He said he expects to know or make some kind of comment early next year, that he'll announce a new Fed chair early next year. He also was asked about Elon Musk and how those two are getting along. He said,
I get along with Elon.
I just didn't want to only
Elon and I get along.
Do electric cars. Yeah. So that is out there. And then I'm just trying to see. Yeah, that was kind of some of the key things. He was asked about Witkoff, Steve Witkoff, who is over there in Russia in terms of Ukraine, Russia, that war. He says getting talk updates after this cabinet meeting. So maybe we'll hear something a little bit later on.
Yeah, just a couple more things that I think are relevant to our audience about prices. He said the beef price is coming down, and he also thanked President Xi for soybean purchases. Veterans Affairs Secretary Doug Collins also spoke at the White House during this cabinet meeting.
All right, folks, all the headlines you can find on the Bloomberg and at Bloomberg.com. In the meantime, we'll be talking about it over the next 3 hours. And we are also going to be heading to our Ed Ludlow. He is in Vegas at the AWS reInvent event. They're talking artificial intelligence, the data centers, which AWS is so involved in, not just in the United States, of course, but around the world. So we're looking forward to some key conversations from that. In the meantime, we've got a equity market that's kind of bouncing around here. We are in the green, but if you look at the S&P 500, Tim, most names in that index are lower today.
Yeah, taking a look there, we do have 228 stocks that are higher, 271 lower. The Dow right now is up 0.3%. The NASDAQ composite up 0.7%. I'm typing in CRYP Go on the Bloomberg terminal, Carol, and I'm seeing that Bitcoin is up above 92,000. And it's at right now up about 6.7%.
Yeah, that's today. But as you know, the narrative around Bitcoin has been a sharp pullback. We've seen that in Bitcoin prices over the past month or so. It is punishing really the most speculative corners of the cryptocurrency market. And the latest casualty is American Bitcoin Corporation. Shares of the crypto miner, which is co-founded by Eric Trump, lost more than half of their value in less than 30 minutes today, triggering some repeated trading halts. So we want to get a little bit more on what's going on.
We welcome Monique Mulima. She's equities reporter for Bloomberg News. She's in the Bloomberg Toronto bureau. Monique, help us make sense of what's happening to American Bitcoin right now, down 36% as we speak on a day when Bitcoin is actually higher? Why are we seeing so much pressure on American Bitcoin today?
Yes, so American Bitcoin, they're a Bitcoin miner that was spun out of Hut 8 earlier this year, and they've also been seeing declines throughout the year as Bitcoin prices have fallen. Like you mentioned, Bitcoin prices have been pressured recently. They're, even with the gains today, still down close to around 30% from their highs they saw earlier. And for Bitcoin miners like American Bitcoin, that weighs a lot on them because they make most of their revenue through either holding or selling Bitcoin. So when the prices go down, they're going to go down as well. And we've seen that they've actually underperformed Bitcoin over the past couple months. Some of the other things that are...
Well, wait, let me just jump in here, though. Why the disconnect? Because my gut would be that with Bitcoin going back and bouncing up, mind you, the trend that we've seen as of late has been a lower one. But with a bounce up today, why wouldn't shares of American Bitcoin also be higher?
So American Bitcoin also has some other factors weighing on it. Part of it is that, for other Bitcoin miners, they've diversified. Some of them are looking at AI data centers and other opportunities to kind of get out of just Bitcoin. But for American Bitcoin, there are also some specific pressures today. Eric Trump posted earlier on X that the company had an unlock for some of its shares today. So that might be pressuring as well. And you also have to keep in mind for American Bitcoin, they have a largely retail trader base in terms of their investors. And that can make shares a lot more volatile to some of the things happening in markets or changing sentiment. And we've seen that crypto sentiment right now is a little more negative.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair to say. Still a lot more positive than it was yesterday. A little bit of a rebound. We're seeing a little bit of a floor now that's above 90,000. What do the folks you talk to in the crypto community say to you about sort of the next catalyst or the next ceiling or floor to watch for?
Yeah, so in terms of the next catalyst, people are really hoping to see the market structure bill pass. That's being considered by the U.S. Senate. That would give some more clarity around kind of the crypto industry as a whole and the regulations surrounding that. So they see that's a potential catalyst. There's also just needs to be better sentiment in the markets in general. We're seeing crypto isn't just moving off of its own prices in terms of tokens. It's being affected by the broader macro environment of more risk off in terms of investors right now. And, if we do see more interest rate cuts going forward, maybe investors would also feel more confident, analysts are thinking.
So are we seeing, though, I'm just trying to think of some of the other miners that are out there, and maybe not apples to apples. I mean, I'm looking at Strategy. It's actually up today. But are other miners being hurt as well?
So Hut 8 is being hurt today, but that's because they still are the majority owner of American Bitcoin. So their shares are down quite a bit, more so off of what's happening with American Bitcoin itself. But like I mentioned, there's some specific factors to American Bitcoin because they did have some shares unlocked today from some early investors that often can weigh on crypto companies, especially ones that have large retail investor bases that can be a little more kind of volatility added in because of that, because they're moving a lot off of sentiment.
So insider selling?
Not necessarily that the insiders are selling. It's that there's been an unlock, so they have the opportunity if they choose to sell. But we've seen in past for crypto companies, we saw this with SharpLink as well earlier this year, that when there are unlocks, that those shares can often then go down because of some of those retail investor fears that, if the early investors can now sell, maybe they'll choose to. So then they're thinking, maybe we should get out before they do. Yeah,
one thing we should note is we have spoken to Eric Trump several times over the last few months. He told me in September that he was committed to the company. He owns about 7.5% of it. And then, Carol, he reiterated to us just in the last few weeks that he's still committed to the company and he hasn't sold any shares and will not be selling any shares anytime soon. Yeah, definitely committed and certainly defending the idea of Bitcoin. But that is true of like many folks who are within the Bitcoin industry. And we've got a story on the Bloomberg too that talks about like get ready for like a tremendous rally again and a bounce back. So we definitely see this, that what can be a volatile trade. I just want to look ahead real quickly. Just got about 40 seconds here, Monique. We've got a Fed meeting next week. If we get a rate cut, the gut response would be that any kind of speculative, high valuation, type of asset should rally. Should we assume that that will be true along the crypto universe?
Yes, there are some analysts that are saying an interest rate cut would help crypto. We've seen some more risk pullback in terms of investors recently, as there were fears earlier that maybe there wouldn't be interest rate cuts or uncertainty around the path for interest rates going forward. So they're hoping that once people have a little more certainty around kind of the macro environment in the U.S. and where the economy is headed, then they'll feel more confident being in some of these riskier assets like crypto.
All right, we're going to leave it. Monique, thanks so much. Monique Mulima, she is equities reporter at Bloomberg News, joining us from our Toronto bureau. Again, as we look at American Bitcoin, we did see some halts in the trade today, but this stock, I'm assuming it's one of your decliners today.
Yeah, it is down right now by 36%, but earlier in the session it was down as much as 51%.
Yeah, I mean, this one, and it's still up 14% year to date. So we have seen, you know, quite some strong moves to the upside, but also we're seeing a fair amount of selling. All right, folks, we are just getting started. Kind of some things coming at us from some different places. We, of course, covered all the news out of the nation's capital, the president in that cabinet meeting, heading to Toronto on crypto. And now we're going to head back to Vegas, Las Vegas, head to Vegas, and to our own Ed Ludlow. He's getting ready to talk with Amazon's head scientist for artificial general intelligence at Amazon. So looking forward to that. That's next.
It's 2:21 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. We've got the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all advancing. Wall Street staging a cautious rebound today. Right now, the S&P is up 13. That is a gain of 0.2%. Dramatically different tone from this time yesterday, with the S&P now at 68.25. The Dow up 147. Boeing leading the Dow higher. Right now, we've got the Dow Industrials up 0.3%. NASDAQ up 0.6%. The 10-year 4.08%, the 2-year 3.51%. Spot gold down $37 the ounce, down 0.9%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil 58.68 a barrel, down 1.1%. And Bitcoin now higher by 6.4%, 91,950 on Bitcoin. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Carol Master, Tim Stanovic, live here on Bloomberg Businessweek Daily. Well, underway in Las Vegas is AWS reInvent. This is Amazon Web Services' flagship annual cloud conference, bringing together developers, engineers, leaders, and businesses for a week of keynotes, product announcements, technical sessions. So much going on. It's also about networking, and it's also where we find our co-host of Bloomberg Tech, Ed Ludlow.
He's along with Rohit Prasad, Senior Vice President and Head Scientist, Artificial General Intelligence at Amazon. Ed, take it away.
Yeah, it's been interesting, guys, because like the market reaction to all of this has been varied. But everyone I speak to says this is a substantive move forward across the full AI stack with AWS, not just silicon, but in the model side as well. Rohit, it's good to see you.
Yeah, excited to be here.
It's been some time since I last saw you, and in those days, you were building Alexa from the ground up, really. Yeah. Let's start with Nova 2. This is the second generation of Amazon and AWS's frontier model, and it's a year since the first iteration came out. This is a fancy question, but in the sort of Amazon model taxonomy, you put a lot of emphasis on reasoning. Mm-hmm. What is different with Nova 2 in that regard?
Yeah, Nova 2 state-of-the-art frontier models. We introduced 4 of them today. A year back, we announced Nova first generation of the models. Incredible adoption that we see with our customers. And then it's not been that we have only done Nova 1, but along the way we introduced many new models like Nova Sonic, Nova Premier. But today we announced our Nova 2 generation, which has 4 models. Each are very multimodal reasoning-based models, which means they process not just text as input, but many other modalities. They're great for perception tasks, for everyday workflows, cost-effective reasoning-style model where you can control the extent of the reasoning. You also have an upgrade to Nova Sonic and a first-of-its-kind model called Nova Omni, which not only just generates text, but also generates image output.
So the simple question a lot of people have is, why did you need to have 4 variants and 4 different degrees of model performance? Yeah. In one release?
Yeah, so we always find customers want different selection, different operating points. But let me get to the main thing here, which will put it in context. If you think about it, the perennial challenge we have in the industry, new model comes out, benchmarks look great, customers try it in production, both internal and external customers that we have, And we find the consistent feedback, oh, it doesn't work in our environment as we would think, or in our production setting. So that's where the reality sinks in. There is a simple reason for that, because these frontier models, as great they are, they do not know your domain, your proprietary workflows, which sit behind your walls. So we ask the question, how can we build something that knows your systems, your data? And for that, the real answer was that everyone is seeking a frontier model that's expert in your domain. Now, you have a few choices right now. All of them are suboptimal. You can start fine-tuning on the edges a frontier model. You can take an open weights model and start...
Suboptimal why?
I'll get into that. So you can fine-tune only on the edges, for instance, because you have these adapter-based model training, which doesn't really give you the full expertise, because these models are already fully built. So you can't steer them to your domain. And when you try to steer it to your domain, it forgets a lot of its general properties that were remarkable. So then you're left with this ultimate choice, which is, do I build my own from scratch? But that's prohibitively expensive. So that's why we brought Nova Forge, because now you have a way of building your own frontier model, starting with every stage of the model development, from pre-training to mid-training and post-training, with one unique thing, which is you can now infuse your data and premix with Amazon curated.
So let me jump in here. I'm not going to pretend to be smarter than I am. You can have a foundation model with tens of billions, hundreds of billions of parameters, but the issue that you're outlining is that if it has no relevance to you in its data set, it has a limited utility.
Yes.
So let's go to Nova Forge. This is the ability to build a model using data sets from within your own company.
Yes.
Simple layman's interpretation. Just go a bit further on what you're trying to solve for here, and actually, if it's as good as you say, the commercial importance of it.
Yeah, because the general intelligence model it's not like intelligence is a monolith process, right? So the intelligence to be really useful in your setting, you need to plug in your data, your knowledge, your system workflows, and that starts with the earliest stages of the training. That's how we grow up. A lot of our foundational capabilities, we are the most efficient if we have learned the domain as early as possible. That's what we are trying to do with Nova Forge. You have multiple checkpoints available for you to make Nova your own, which we actually call a novella, right? And you can name it whatever you want. But this becomes your model, which knows your environment, that's optimized as a variant that you can build your applications and agents for. And the beauty is that it preserves the foundational properties, because the core data that gives that frontier intelligence is also mixed with your proprietary domain knowledge.
I always am a bit hesitant to give these kind of behind-the-scenes moments, but before we started this live conversation, we were debating, is Amazon or AWS a full-stack AI company? The debate around it is, AWS has always been number one, cloud computing in terms of scale for both compute capacity, storage, and what's available, right? Is it the number one AI company is now the question. And what unites those two debates is cost and efficiency.
Yes.
What is different with the Nova 2 generation and with Nova Forge from that perspective?
Absolutely. First, AWS, I'm glad people think of it as infrastructure, because that's where everything starts. But to us, it's always been a full stack company where you have the infrastructure layer, the model and AI as a service at the middle layer, and at the top layer you have multiple applications that are serving our customers. So it's always been a full stack. With Nova, as you said, we are really democratizing the AI for everyone, where everyone can have their frontier model that knows their domain. And with that, the beauty is that the cost goes down for building your applications on top of this model that's your variant, because you can start with a model that can actually be distilled from a large teacher model, or a smaller model that can be still very performant compared to other large giant models. So that also gives you a huge cost lever. And this is why Forge is great, because it's making AI more affordable as well for everyone.
What are the benchmarks by which you hold yourselves to account on that? I think you've discussed with my colleague Matt Day about Nova 1 generation, where it ranked in the benchmarks. The real test is in real world deployment. But is it as simple as saying cost per token, latency, multimodal latency. How do you judge your efforts?
Yeah, first of all, public benchmarks are a good indicator, but they're not sufficient. The real indicator is performance in your real-world environments. And that comes down to accuracy, cost, latency. And that's why we refer to this as price performance. Nova models are industry-leading in price performance because we have optimized for all three together. And that's incredibly hard. And with Forge now, we are giving you those knobs to optimize for your price performance needs, because your applications may have a different scaling requirement, different kind of use cases. And now you have the same knobs that our internal teams have. And that's why I love Forge.
Rohit, internally, is AGI a goal and a remit that you've been given by this company to achieve?
Yeah, first of all, I wish AGI was thought about as a practical thing, not a sensationalizing element. To me, we are really focused on building this generally intelligent model that can be forged into these different specialists that do useful things in your environment. And starting with the digital environment is great. Things will happen in the physical environment as well. This is why we have giant robotics efforts as well. Internally and externally, you see a lot of people working in that area. So I'm a very optimist about practical AGI that will help everyone in humanity.
Very quick fact check, Nova Forge, I've seen a number of $100,000 per year. What does that represent? It's a per desk, it's a per training exercise. Explain the business model of it.
Yeah, it's by your company's account. I mean, we can, the key is that I would focus on not that amount, because you have to think about what you're getting for it. You're getting the deepest access possible in what I think of as open training paradigm, where you're also getting access to frontier scale data mixing that makes these properties of the model be not just general purpose, but also more specialized in your domain. So the value is incredible. And then I think you will see that this kind of a value, that amount is actually minuscule in the context of things.
When we first met, you were building Alexa, early generations of Echo Dot. I, as you know, have an Echo device in most rooms in my house, and I have been able to use Alexa Plus. But my interactions with Alexa, the latest generation, are not what my interactions are with various other tools from OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, particularly in voice. You know, I think about how I use ChatGPT voice, but there is improvement. Can you, because it's still within the portfolio for you, what comes next with Alexa, and how are you going to take the work you've done with Nova to make improvements? Yeah. Because Alexa is built on Nova, among other models.
So Alexa Plus, I'm super excited about. If you haven't used it, I urge you to use it a lot now. It's a remarkable upgrade over the Alexa of the one that you've been using for a while. It's completely re-architected from the ground up. But the customer reception has been great. We are seeing, personally in my usage, it's a much more useful and very natural AI. And what all it can do is still, I haven't seen something that can do everything Alexa Plus can do.
Rohit Prasad, head scientist, general intelligence, SVP at Amazon. It's great to catch up.
Thank you, it was great, Ed. Thank you.
AI here in Las Vegas at AWS reInvent 2025. Back to you guys.
All right. So appreciate our own Ed Ludlow. He's going to be back in the next hour, too. He's got the CEO of AWS, so looking forward to that.
Yeah, Matt Garman coming up in just a little bit of time. Listen, you got to go get ready for that interview.
No, there's so much going on, and I think about with the hyperscalers, Amazon in particular. There was a great story that Matt Day did at the end of November, and it just talked about their data center operation being much larger than commonly understood. We're talking about 900 facilities, more than 900 facilities in more than 50 countries. And this was documents that Bloomberg and the investigative website Source Material had reviewed. So, I mean, their footprint and what they see, it's a lot.
Also out of the flagship annual cloud conference in Las Vegas, Amazon's cloud unit racing to get the latest version of its AI chip to market, renewing efforts to sell hardware capable of rivaling products from NVIDIA and Google. The accelerator is called Trainium 3.
Yeah.
It was recently installed in a few data centers. It'll be available for customers beginning on Tuesday. That's according to Dave Brown, a VP with AWS, telling Matt Day in an interview, here's what he said, quote, as we get into early next year, we'll start to scale out very, very quickly.
I love it. Like all these firms, their chips, the competition is certainly on. Hey, as we head to a break, folks, we're looking at a market where we're bouncing around some volatility, little changes, just up about 1/3% on the S&P 500. NASDAQ 100 up 213 points, a gain of 0.8%, and kind of an even split, slightly lower, 274 names to the downside in the S&P 500. When we come back, investment diversification. Yes, it even matters for the world's wealthiest. More when we come back.
It's 2:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. I'm Charlie Pellet. We have got the S&P 500 index higher now for the 6th time in 7 trading days. S&P up 18, 68.31 where we stand right now, up by about 0.3%. Dow Industrials up 204 on the Dow, gain there of 0.4%. We are seeing a cautious rebound. NASDAQ up 157 for the NASDAQ Composite Index. That's a gain now of 0.7%. The Bloomberg Mag 7 Index up 0.5% with the 10-year at 4.08%, the 2-year 3.51%. Gold is now down 0.9%, $41.95 the ounce on the precious metal. Silver continuing its advance, 58.12 right now, up 0.2%. A retreat for West Texas Intermediate crude, 58.50 a barrel. WTI down by 1.4%. A dramatically different tone for Bitcoin today compared to this time yesterday. Bitcoin right now up 6.8% at 92,300 on Bitcoin. Cloudflare shares higher after Barclays launched coverage on the infrastructure software company with an overweight rating and a $235 price target. Right now, we have got shares of Cloudflare at 201, up by 2.4%. Earnings after the close of trading today will include CrowdStrike, Box Inc., and also Marvell Technology. Recapping, S&P up 0.3, Bitcoin right now up 6.8%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thanks so much. Well, a recent study by Bank of America Family Office finds that overall, family offices are optimistic about the outlook of the U.S. stock market, private equity, and merger and acquisition activity, with more than 6 in 10 anticipating that the markets will move higher over the next year. Now, the study covers a lot, everything from AI and alternatives to wealth across generations and wealth transfers of more than $100 trillion, more like $124 trillion over the next decade to heirs and also to women. It's something that we have talked about a lot in our weekly discussion, Women, Money, and Power, where we look at all the economic implications of the massive wealth transfer that's underway, how it is impacting, Tim, the investing, saving, and also giving landscapes.
With some thoughts on that, we welcome Elizabeth Thiessen, head of family office solutions at Bank of America Private Bank. It's got some $447 billion in assets under management. She joins us from Charlotte, North Carolina. Elizabeth, how are you?
I'm great, Tim. Good to be with you both.
It's good to have you with us. I just want to set the scene a little bit just to contextualize the different families that you work with. What would be like a typical family's net worth and size? Like, what are we talking here for family office clients for Bank of America Private Bank?
Well, it ranges. And in this study in particular, we talked to over 335 family offices, and they ranged from 25 million in assets that they're managing to over 5 billion. So it really is a wide spectrum of family offices that we spoke to and we'll talk about here today in the results.
So what did you find that was top of mind for them? What, acknowledging that, of course, not everybody has the same priorities?
Yeah, a few things really stood out to us. This was a very rich set of data that came out of the study. I will highlight that of the clients that we talked to, over 60% of them had greater than 500 million in assets. So to your earlier question. But some of the themes that came through, one, I'd highlight, you talked about the wealth transfer that's underway, and that really came through in the results as well. It was really underpinned. We could call it the great family office transfer. What's not surprising, 87% of the families we spoke to haven't transitioned yet to the next generation. And that's not surprising, so there's really been an increased velocity in formation of family offices. But what they told us was 6 out of 10 expect to transition in the next 10 years, 1 out of 3 in the next 5 years. So it's beginning to unfold. And, as we asked family offices about the implications of that, they're definitely starting to think about a new generation of error in investing, increased focus on philanthropy, and a definite increased use of technology. So I think that wealth transfer that we're seeing holistically across the U.S. is absolutely impacting family offices, and it's starting to happen. The second theme I would highlight is the increased focus on alternatives. What was interesting in the study is 2/3 of the family offices we spoke to referred to themselves as conservative investors. But yet their allocation was pretty even between marketable securities and alternatives, 36% marketable securities, 34 alts. But they're leaning into alts. When we asked, what do you want? Where do you think you're going to get the greatest return in the future? What's your area of focus as you look forward? Private equity was number 1, followed by direct investments in companies, followed by real estate. So we see that alternatives focus, continuing to take center stage.
Elizabeth, can I just jump in for a second? I am curious. Do any of them think about, in terms of the wealth transfer, what it means? Like, are they going to also go spending money, or is it all about, ensuring that the wealth exists for future generations? I'm just curious if there's a different take, whether it's women or whether it's a younger generation.
Well, it's both. I mean, there's definitely a desire, when we talk to family offices, there's definitely a desire to maintain the mission and purpose of that family office and why it was created to begin with. And what came through in the research, which we found really interesting, one of the things we asked family offices is, how involved is your principal in the management and running of the family office? And they had a scale, either, not very, less involved, moderately involved, very involved. And the clients that have family offices that have less involved principals, they expect, 73% of them expect the mission and purpose of the family office to change when handed to the next generation. So to us, as we read that, it's a real, call to action that as we know this transfer is beginning to unfold, having early conversations around what do you want that next generation to do with it? Is it to go spending? Is it to continue the purpose that the first generation created? Having those conversations and that intention early is paramount.
I'm sure you caught this story in the Wall Street Journal over the weekend, but it was about these so-called trust reveals where the super wealthy families are having these, not necessarily parties, but meetings with financial advisors, maybe family offices, to really go through the numbers for the next generation. Oftentimes it sounds like some of these families, they grow up knowing they're wealthy, but the kids don't actually know they're getting a $100 million trust fund. What's the communication like? Did that story resonate with you?
Yeah, I think, we see both ends of the spectrum. Sometimes you see families where it is a reveal that happens. Others, though, I find if there's a really intentional process where that is revealed with milestones and intention, I think that can have better outcomes ultimately.
Yeah, it's super interesting, right? Just what's going on. We've spent a lot of time, Elizabeth, talking about women specifically and the wealth transfer that is expected to be in the hands of women specifically. I've gone through the report. I'm just curious what you guys are seeing specifically, if you've seen any transfers already to women and how they approach money perhaps differently.
Yeah, we absolutely do. There's a lot of the transition that happens for women in family office. And I think, their approach, we do regularly see an increased focus on philanthropy that can play through. Many times women in a family are getting involved early in philanthropy, and then that can play through. The study did highlight that when these family offices transition, 51% expect an increased focus on philanthropy with the next gen. So we do see that. I think the other part of the study we found really interesting is sort of what we called the hidden complexity of a family office. As you mentioned, Carol, it was broad ranging in terms of the topics that we touched on. But one of the areas that we really wanted to get more data around is what we call the hidden complexity. And we really highlighted that these family offices, it's more than just the investment philosophy that they're executing against. It's all the related operational work that comes with that.
Right. Elizabeth, we've got to run. Forgive us. But hopefully we can continue this conversation in the future. Elizabeth Thiessen, Head of Family Office Solutions at Bank of America Private Bank. When we come back, Stocks on the Move.
You're listening to Bloomberg Businessweek Daily with Carol Massar and Tim Stenbeck on Bloomberg Radio and Television.
All right, everybody, we are coming up on the last hour of trading on this Tuesday, December 2nd. Carol Massar, Tim Stenbeck, live here at Bloomberg headquarters in New York City. Having said that, bouncing around on the equity trade, keep in mind, a week from now, the Fed will have started its two-day meeting as it gets ready for that last Fed decision of 2025. I feel like it's a big one.
Yeah, it is a big one. December 10th is next Wednesday. We'll hear from Jay Powell on that day. Of course, they'll begin their meeting the day before, as Carol mentioned.
Yeah.
I guess a lot of questions might have to do with the next Fed chair. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I don't know. Jay Powell's going to be like, yeah, the Fed's... I can
know,
see. Hey, Jay, what's going to go on with the next Fed chair?
Are you going to stay on the Federal Reserve?
I'm here to serve as... I'm here to whatever.
I think that's
what is it that they always say?
We should. You and I should do.
What?
We should do some friendly wagering about next week's Fed meeting. Everybody's doing prediction markets now, Carol.
I know. Do you know 60 Minutes did a whole piece on prediction markets?
Yeah.
I know. It didn't come up between us yet.
I saw it. It's great.
All right. Bouncing around here. Up 24 points on the S&P. NASDAQ 100, a gain of 232 points, up 0.9 percentage point. So, Fed meeting next week.
Fed meeting next week.
Yeah.
I'm Tim Stenbeck, along with Carol Massar.
You are.
Let's take a look at some stocks on the move today. We're joined by Bloomberg Television markets correspondent Norah Mulinda. Norah, what do you have for us?
Boeing.
Well, yeah, I was going to say.
How do you not know it? You love Boeing.
Well, I was going to let her do the review.
I was going to do a cute little intro, stock flying high. It was.
Sorry.
I had a whole thing.
Okay.
Carol.
3, 2, 1.
Yes.
Go.
Shares of Boeing flying high. You're looking at ticker BA. This is the best performing stock in the S&P 500. And of course, this is after investors are feeling really reassured after the CFO said that they should expect billions of dollars in cash flow next year. And of course, if you really kind of look at what we've been seeing this year, we've been seeing the company burning through about $2 billion in cash. So this is a welcome reassurance that we're hearing from the company here. So you are seeing shares of Boeing up as much as, more than 10%, rising for their best day since April. So you really are seeing some strong performance here. The street's clearly liking it.
Yeah. I mean, number one gainer, as you said, quite a bump to the upside. Quite a bump sometimes on a Boeing plane.
Boeing,
See, I like
flying high
that.
today.
There's a lot of turbulence. Like we noticed that, right? Like on some of our
Are you talking
flights.
about real turbulence?
Yeah.
Yeah, not equity market turbulence?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Not at this moment.
So we're centered.
Yes.
Okay.
We're aligned now.
Okay. Where are we going next?
Well, let's move over into healthcare. I've got my eyes on Janux Therapeutics. Now, this is the company I had to dig a bit into. It was just a little bit less than $1 billion in market cap, but it's a drug developer, and it's seeing its worst day ever. It's really, really seeing a strong pullback today, down as much as 51%. It did have some interim data from its early stage trial in terms of its prostate cancer therapy that disappointed investors. So really taking a beating today. I mean, the stock on a year-to-date basis, though, down 69%. So it's been a pretty brutal year for this company.
It's so hard for some of these biotechs, right, who are often centered sometimes around one individual drug. This may not be the case for this one, but yeah, when there's some disappointment, it's true for the major pharmaceuticals too, if they're banking on something.
Right.
All right. That stock, as you said, down today, down 70% year to date with 18% of the float short. Where would you like to go?
Signet Jewelers is where I want to go, although maybe not enough people are going there.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the consumer. We've been hearing about Black Friday data. There's so much retail earnings we've been getting as well. But in looking at Signet, this is ticker SIG. We're seeing shares that are falling. Really, of course, we are seeing this as the worst day since April. This is after The company's essentially expressing some caution as we look ahead into the holiday season, which is a really key season for the company. If you think about the fact that people are purchasing engagement rings during that time period as we head toward the end of the year, ahead of Valentine's Day next year, they're saying that they expect to see some sort of caution here when we think about the U.S. consumer, despite the fact that they did get earnings that were better than expected. This is really what's dragging on the stock today.
Yeah, this is the parent company of Kay Jewelers and Zales. So, if you're in the market for that type of jewelry, this company has a good view.
What do you mean
on
that type of jewelry?
Diamonds.
What does that mean?
I was wondering the same.
That type of jewelry.
You know what? I still wonder about the, what's the right way to talk about these?
Lab-grown diamonds?
Yes, thank you.
I think they're a great idea.
So the effect that's having.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That was before my time. Like, I was, unfortunately was stuck with a non-lab grown diamond in the whole engagement process.
I know.
You talk to people who are a generation younger than I am, and it's all about the lab grown.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Apparently you can't even tell the difference.
Well, because they're the same thing.
Right.
I don't know. Can they go as big?
That's a good question.
They go big and they are way less expensive.
They're way less expensive.
Well, there you go.
Which makes me think about, what really is the value of these things, right?
I like that.
Like what? I don't know. Like, what does it cost to make a lab diamond? I guess you should assume that it's like.
It's a very good question this is a very good question and discussion for De Beers, and it's a reason why De Beers in Botswana are having so much trouble right now.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, all right. We've kind of just jumped all over the place. Thank you for that, Norah. We really appreciate it. That's our Stock Movers podcast. We also, can I just quick mention Warner Brothers Discovery? Because we are seeing that stock up about 3.3% here in the trade. Comcast, their bid seeking to merge NBC Universal with Warner Brothers Discovery.
All right. So maybe a little M&A news. Maybe.
Some play. Check out our Stock Movers podcast. You can find it 5-minute episodes, winners, losers on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcast. If you're watching TV, the close is coming your way in just a moment. They will be more focused. We're going to continue as crazy as we are on Bloomberg Businessweek Daily.